PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And we're up and we're rolling and it's Friday afternoon. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm David Rabinovitz. Glad to be back with you.
David Rabinovitz, and we are so happy that you're here. But I got to tell you, we have a great guest that is supposed to come on right away with us. And I'm so excited to talk about Seed, which is the newest dispensary to open in Boston, Massachusetts. You know, we're watched all over the world, David, but in Boston, this is only the third adult use dispensary to open since Ballot Box 2016. Yikes, huh? That's only 5 years ago. They've opened 3 adult use dispensaries. How crazy is that? Did I lose? I see April. Hi, April. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
We have to stop meeting like this. It's twice in 1 week, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And I think David is still with us. David, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay. I just wasn't sure because I kind of was trying to interact with you. This is April Arrasate. Did I do it right?
Nice job. That was beautiful.
I've been practicing all week. You are the CEO of Seed, which is Boston's newest dispensary. And I was just kind of telling David, you know, it's amazing to me. The voters voted in 2016, and it took 2 years to just open up a dispensary for adult use in Massachusetts. And now you are the third dispensary to open up in the biggest city in the state, the capital, Boston, Massachusetts. So first of all, congratulations, April.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a long road, but it's totally worth it. And we're so excited now that we're here.
And even though we don't like to date these things, but I'm going to do it anyway, your grand opening is Saturday, March 13th, which happens to be tomorrow because we are live streaming this on Friday the 12th. So yeah. We wish you good luck with that. But I got to tell you, I've been gushing about your dispensary since our little tour that I took on Wednesday this week. First of all, tell us a little bit about how long it took you to open your doors and how long a struggle really has it been for you and your other supporters and owners and staff there, and many of them are female.
Yeah, so we've been at this, like I said, for 2 years. It's a slow process, particularly in the city of Boston. Everybody was getting their legs under them with the recreational program. It's important to site correctly. We did a large build out. We also aren't just a cannabis dispensary. One of the main goals to this dispensary was to co-locate with CORE, which is a social justice cannabis museum. So we are a dispensary, Seed, but we also house CORE, and CORE has an exhibition gallery that's really meant to educate people about the drug war, incarceration in America, the disproportionate impacts that the drug war has had on low-income communities and minority communities, and also just how we got here. The current exhibition is called American Warden, and it's really meant to make people think about incarceration in America. I could go on and on about it, and I won't, but just like one thing that people, I think, need to know in general is like America, you know, has 5% of the world's population, but we house 25% of the prisoner population. And that's just a really disturbing thing for a first world country. But so I'd love for people to come and experience the museum. It's different, it's new. We're focused on a retail experience that is intelligent, and also gives you all of your brands that in one spot. Because we are retail only, we carry everyone. And we're excited for everybody to be able to have a convenient place to get everything they need. So yeah, the grand opening's tomorrow in JP. Hyde Square, 11 to 8, we're doing ribbon cuttings and there'll be vendors here and all that good stuff. So thanks for shouting us
I
off.
wish it was going to be as warm tomorrow as it is today, but perhaps that'll. People in New England and Boston are pretty hardy. I expect you'll have a pretty big crowd there. You know, one of the most impressive things about the tour and the dispensary was not just your passion about what you've accomplished there, April, but the fact that you guys have a jail cell in the middle of the dispensary. Can you explain how that all happened?
Yeah, art is meant to be visceral, right? How do you get people's attention? And I was trying to create something that we knew would put people in the place. I think we all know a lot of things. We're aware of a lot of things, but until you're in the place, you don't really, it doesn't stick with you. And that is the point. I have a curating council of experts in social justice, Ivy League professors, best-selling authors. And one of the things, we held an inaugural event at the Museum of Fine Arts, and a curator there was kind enough to present to us about what creates a successful exhibit. And one of the things she said was, you have to create a moment of communion between your guests and the exhibit. And if at least one exhibit creates that moment of communion with someone, then maybe they walk away and they have a mindset that is different than the one they walked in with. And that's what we're trying to do, to create more reasonable drug policy, not just for cannabis, but for all drugs down the line. I mean, humans like substances, that's it. I love to say it's all medicine, but just humans love substances. It's who we are. And so we need to just accept that and create more reasonable policy around that. And so the jail cell was meant to create that visceral feeling that people might walk away with. We sourced the doors from Belmont Prison in Massachusetts. And inside the jail cell, maybe the most powerful part of it is Nyambi McIntosh, who is the youngest daughter of Peter Tosh, legendary reggae icon. And she's
Wait, hang on a second. David, do you know who Peter Tosh is?
Yes, I do, Jimmy.
All right,
and who did he
David.
play? What was the reggae band that he played with?
Now you got me with an absolute
Bob Marley and the Wailers. He was an
That's right.
original. He was an original partner of Bob Marley and the Wailers. Okay, so go ahead, April. I just love doing that.
He also is like responsible for basically the legalization ballad, which is legalize it. So I know you've heard that song before, David, even if you can't remember it now. So at any rate, she tells the story of her brother, Jawara Tosh, who's also known as Tosh One. He was a musician himself. And he basically lost his life to the drug war. It is so powerful, the generational impact that prohibition has had on this family. And she tells it so movingly. So for anyone that can come down and sort of sit in the jail cell and have that experience and learn about Jawara's story, I think I just hope they walk away with something that stays with them.
Well, the first time I heard that story, it was incredibly moving for me. And I remember when I first heard it, which was at the first ever Boston Cannabis Week. And it was about 10 days before the CanX Jamaican convention. And I walked up to her and I said, look, I'm going to be in Jamaica. Can we do a one-on-one interview? And it was such a powerful interview. And she and I are the only two people who actually heard it, because we had an SD card issue and it got corrupted. I laugh now, but I was really embarrassed. And I hope Nyambe will forgive me at some point and we'll get a chance to sit down again and have a chat, because her story and the story of her brother is so powerful. And I'm just going to tease it, because if you really want to hear it, go to Seed and listen to the story in the jail cell. It's really cool and very moving. April, walk us through how challenging it was for you to put together an investment team, and you have mostly minorities, you have mostly women on your staff. Talk to me a little bit, tell us a little bit more about how important it was for you to have that kind of backing in order to get to the starting line.
Yeah, so, the mission here, I wanted to be sure the mission was not just outward, but also went inward. So we wanted to create a company DNA that was aligned with our mission. So organically and naturally, myself and my partners, Tomas Gonzalez and Perry Higgins, who happened to be a Latino man and an African-American woman, were working together. So that was not something that I had to go seek out. It just was who we were. But I wanted to make sure in raising capital that we were doing a couple of things, that we were providing this opportunity for people who wouldn't normally have the opportunity to invest in something like this, and also representing women and people of color and local people, people who were within walking distance of the dispensary. So we are currently 72% women owned, 81% of our investors are people of color, 82% are local, and collectively we have spent more than 10 years incarcerated by the drug war. And those numbers I'm very proud of those numbers. I think we have power as consumers. It's probably the most power we have in today's society is what we choose to buy and where. And I hope that, our guests will use that power to find companies like ours that disrupt the status quo. And maybe cannabis is such a new industry, we have the opportunity to create new success. And I think cannabis deserves that, rather than just the same people who always had everything continuing to have everything that they once vilified.
David, I bet you have a question for April. Am I right? I think I set you up okay.
Okay, you set me up. Okay, thanks, Jimmy. How did you walk us through, because we have a lot of people who watch the show who are in the social equity program. Walk us through, how did you go about identifying people to raise money from? How did you get the word out?
So Tomas Gonzalez is part of, and by the way, we are not social equity or empowerment. We are a DBE, a disadvantaged business enterprise, a women-owned.
Wait, can you explain the distinction?
Yeah, so economic empowerment refers to a group of people that were deemed empowerment applicants. I believe there's 123 of them. They were deemed that in a 2-week process that took place years ago. Since then, which was crazy, right? Because then what if you didn't know about it? Since then, the state has created a social equity program, basically allowing people who fall in those same characteristics having to do with your address, your socioeconomic status, and your ethnic background, whether or not you qualify for that. But so they've opened up social equity, which basically is the same as economic empowerment, except rather than having been certified in that 2-week period, they are on a rolling basis. And what that does is it allows the applicant priority status. And that means that they go to the top of the pile when they're being reviewed by the state. So we do not qualify for that, but we wanted to make sure we were in the spirit of that. And my partner, Tomas Gonzalez, is from Jamaica Plain, is from where our dispensary is. So again, a lot of our investors are people that we know, that were already in our orbit, people that have businesses in this area, people that grew up in this area. And so it wasn't necessarily we weren't targeting based on these criteria. It's again, just sort of organically who we were, and we're proud of it.
You live your brand, April.
Thank you. They're sort of one and the same.
That's the idea. And in fact, if I remember, when one of the walls that explains the investor makeup and the management makeup, the last thing on there, I believe, was 10% had been incarcerated. Do I remember that right?
Over 10 years incarcerated.
Over 10 years. Sorry.
And greater than 10 years incarcerated.
I remembered the 10.
Yeah. Good job. Yeah. So we're just trying to make sure that that doesn't become an obstacle for people, because now exactly the same things that people were put behind bars for, people are making millions of dollars on, and still people are behind bars. It's not a thing of the past. We have a tendency to say that happened, but that's happening still.
Oh, it absolutely is. In fact, one of the stats that really bothered me was the fact that in New Jersey, even though voters voted it in legal at the ballot box in November, there were still 5,000 arrests for cannabis possession in that state between Election Day and the day that the governor signed the legalization bill. And it just boggles my mind when I think about that. And obviously, a lot of those people were persons who have been most victimized by the war on drugs. And it's got to stop. I mean, I'm very outspoken about this, and it's one of the reasons why I started this company, was to give people the opportunity to tell their stories about the injustices that they've had to face in their enjoyment of a plant. Okay, it's a plant medicine, but it's still a plant. And now, of course, we're slowly but surely, I believe, inch by inch breaking down that stigma. You still face that, I'm sure, April, when you tell people in your family or your supporter, maybe not your supporters because they support you, but people, friends, you're in the cannabis business, really? Still, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, most of the people in my world, I've been in this industry since 2012. So most of the people in my world, I almost forget those people exist sometimes because they're not around. I'm like, what do you mean? Everybody loves cannabis, but it does still exist. But I also think, like, on a larger level, cannabis is what we can use to sort of create this conversation and understand this. But on a bigger level, if it's not cannabis, it's something else that's being manipulated to sort of harm us as citizens. And I feel like we have choices and we have the right to sort of create our own world. And so we just have to be really careful of who we allow to have power and what sort of policies we allow, and just in everything. I mean, I have a background in biotech. I'm an attorney. I have all these industries. I've seen such horrific injustice that has to do, if I'm honest, with economics. And so
Right.
we're powerful as a people. We just have to, come together.
And
It sounds so cheesy, but that's the reality.
no, no, it's not cheesy at all. And it's so amazing to me that even during the pandemic, where we've had to socially distance, the actual culture of sharing the fragrance, the enjoyment of passing a joint in a group of people that perhaps you didn't know, but you bonded over passing the joint around to these people. It's always had a socialization aspect, but now, of course, we've had to distance ourselves. And yet here we are, perhaps seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of the pandemic, where we do hope that by the end of this year, we'll actually be able to go back to socialization again, and the role that the cannabis plant can play in that, bringing us all together again, right? I mean, isn't that what we're waiting for?
Yeah, I mean, you and I experienced it the other day. You were leaving. I'm like, can we hug? I don't know. It's just tough. I mean, I'm tired of this.
I will say this, I shook more hands face to face and skin to skin in your dispensary than I have in a year.
People can't, it's hard. That's why we have dispensers, Purell dispensers everywhere. We have a very large space here. We have stickers on the floor. But I think, lest we digress, but in the warmer weather, it seems like people are, I don't know.
We have to get out. We have to live. The human beings crave socializations. We're social people. So again, we're all getting a little stir crazy. And needless to say, I don't want to put the kibosh on winter, okay? Because I remember the April 1st snowstorm. David, I bet you do too. Back in, I think it was 97, maybe 96, 26 inches of snow, April Fool's Day. Not.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I had to digress. But this way, I want to make sure we won't have a snowstorm on April 1st. What do you hope to accomplish with your dispensary and your social justice museum? Is it an educational thing that drives you more than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I like revealing injustice. When I started Curaleaf in the Connecticut Curaleaf in 2013, I guess that was, I was fueled by this fire of injustice that I felt when I lost my mom to breast cancer. And I had witnessed, the sort of US cancer machine, and that I felt like it was very money driven. I felt like dying in this country was barbaric. And that sort of injustice sort of fueled me to allow people a more graceful way to die. And it was a medical program in Connecticut, and I wanted to see the justice of that. It seems so unreasonable that you could have something so gentle as a plant to really assist you as you were leaving this plane of existence, or we could dose you to death with opioids and a myriad other drugs that are just sold by different people, and that's the only distinction. And so that sort of injustice that I see and that we all see in the legalization of cannabis and the prohibition of cannabis and incarceration, those things fuel me, and I think fuel a lot of us who maybe in a prior war, if it was the 60s, I would have been like at the front line, with the sign, not the war front line, the other front line.
I understand. I was a protester. I was there. I was 13 years old, but I was there. And I'm David. Were you protesting the war back then?
Too young to be.
You were too young. Yeah. Well, I'm old. What can I tell you? I'm comfortable with that.
I'm
April,
old. I'm old. You're really old.
Before we let you go, April, I do want to talk a little bit about the wall of musicians that you have there and the ability to actually put in a song that has something to do with cannabis. Can you explain how that all came about before we take our 420 break? And then you'll know where I'm going because we talked about this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there's this System of a Down song, prison song, and I run to it, and it just is really, basically saying, they're trying to build a prison for you and me. And I wanted to put all of our favorite musicians on the wall who had been arrested for cannabis possession. So we have mugshots from all these various musicians, and the display talks a lot about the vilification of jazz and what Louis Armstrong faced and his contemporaries back in the day in the American sort of drug policy propaganda machine. And so as part of that exhibit, we asked guests to interact with our Spotify playlist that has, employees, all of us, everyone has selected songs that are meaningful to them that have to do with cannabis. And you can scan the QR code and download the playlist through Spotify, or you can suggest songs to us and we'll add them to the playlist. And that's, music and cannabis are so linked.
Exactly. And I talked to you about Shanty, written by Jonathan Edwards.
It's on.
Of course it is. I told you I signed up for the email and I did it and I'm excited. And again, the people who watch the Green Rush on a regular basis, David will tell you this too. I enlighten people about why and how 420 started with a group of high school kids at San Rafael, California. They were called the Waldos, and they would meet after school in 1971 at the Louis Pasteur statue, and they would catch a buzz until law enforcement, being those public safety guardians that they are, figured it out, and they adopted the 420 code as public consumption of cannabis going on at the corner of Main and Vine or whatever street you happen to be at. Then, of course, the cannabis culture caught on to it. They celebrate April 20th. And in 1971, it happens to coincide with the first time that I tasted cannabis as an 8th grader just outside of Boston. And I've adopted the song Shanty by Jonathan Edwards because that is whenever we heard it on the radio, and it used to be on WCAS AM 740, it was an alternative rock station. David, do you remember that by any chance?
I do, Jimmy. And even if I didn't, we talk about it every week. So it's burned into my mind.
Well, at least you're paying attention. April Arrasate, seed opens on Saturday. Enjoy.
Ready.
Best of luck in the future. We're going to take a time out now. Listen to Shanty by Jonathan Edwards. And when we come back, we're going to celebrate more women in cannabis. Don't go away.
Money.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. There's nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. Going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA.
Hi, I'm Ben Shower, New England rep for Salient Video Management Systems. Let me tell you what makes us different in the security space. We're your trusted advisors for all your security needs. I know how complicated the regulations are in cannabis, and working with Salient Systems will be the polar opposite of that. I give free consultations and will walk you through every step of the process so that you can get what you need at the price you can afford. We're robust, we're simple and scalable. We're Salient Systems, your solutions to all your security needs. Please contact me at the information below, and I'm looking forward to being your trusted advisor.
PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
All right. Well, welcome back to Green Rush Live, our Friday live stream here at Pro Cannabis Media. And this is the month that we celebrate and salute women in history. And on the next 90 minutes on this program, we are going to salute and introduce you to many women that have made it in the cannabis industry, and they're passionate about it and they're successful about it. And we're very excited to salute the women of cannabis that join us here in this next 30 minutes. One is Portia Mittons, owner of the Coughie Pot Dispensary. Hello, Portia.
Hello, how you all doing? Here's my cool coffee pot mug that I drink my coffee out of.
That's right. And just in case you can't see it, it's coffee, Coughie. I think I spelled it right.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, good. And Annie Epley is with us, an old friend from MJ BizCon days, and also the operator of Soil to Soul. She comes to us from Arizona. Hello, Annie.
Hello, guys. So happy to be here.
And a superstar who really doesn't need any introduction to the following of Pro Cannabis Media, because we also share their content with you, the audience, the green nurse herself, Sherri Tutkus. Hi, Sherri.
Oh my goodness. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored here to celebrate women and cannabis and to spread the love and decrease stigma. So thank you for including me. I appreciate it.
Oh my God, you know you're always welcome. In fact, I think you're all family as far as I'm concerned. Portia, welcome to the family. And there's this other guy in the room too. We got to give him a little opportunity to say hello. It's David Rabinovitz. David, say hello.
Yay.
Say hello.
A personality, ladies and gentlemen. That was funny.
Those are that's my one line for the show. I get a line every 30 minutes.
That's not true. In fact, I'm gonna ask you to kind of start things off here, because you do a great job of coming up with these great themes week in and week out, and Isabel Turner, our production coordinator, does a great job of filling up the room with interesting people. So I'm going to kind of toss it over to you. I'm going to throw you in the deep end, David, and I'm going to ask you to kind of anchor this thing. Can you handle that?
Absolutely, Jimmy. Thanks. So Portia, let's start with you, because I know a little bit about your backstory, but tell us how you got about the business and what caused you to start a cannabis business?
It was Friday and I didn't have a job. And someone said, "Hey, what do you think about investing in a dispensary?" And I was like, why not? Like, that almost literally was how the conversation went. I was actually working for a nonprofit, and the nonprofit shut down and we got a severance and a couple other things, and I had been saving up for a home. And so this opportunity came, and so I was like, you know what, why not? Weed sells. I know weed sells. Why not take the chance, go to Oregon and try it out? I called my mom. I said, if it fails, can I sleep on your couch? She said, sure. I said, all right, well, I'm in.
So
And
you're in Michigan, correct?
Oregon.
You're in Oregon. Okay. I thought the store was in Oregon. I thought you were in Michigan.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm in Illinois.
Illinois. I'm sorry. Okay. So who minds the store if you're in Illinois all the time?
So I have business partners, and they mind the store. So I was there for the first 3.5, almost 4 years. And then literally almost a year to today's date is when I came back to Illinois. And I sort of got stuck because of COVID.
I was going to say.
Then I realized, like, you all can run the store without me. Well, I'm going to stay here then.
Yep.
So.
Not a bad way. David?
So the reaction from your friends, family, that sort of thing about the fact you're getting in cannabis, did you run into any stigma from anybody that you knew?
Not in my personal family, no. I'm from Kankakee, Illinois, which is, considered a DIA, disproportionately impacted area. So, weed, cannabis is normal. My siblings do it, not in front of my mom. She knows they do it, but, my siblings do it. All my friends do it. My parents don't, but they're accepting of me. They've just accepted that I'm their wild child, and they just, tell me, we have bail money. So.
Oh, that unconditional love that a parent understands so well.
Yeah. So, and what really surprised me were my grandparents. How accepting they were of it. That shocked me. I did not expect that at all.
Right. It's amazing when you start talking to older people, like people of Jimmy's generation and beyond, right? How very quickly many of them just turn around and have no issue with it and start to recount how, when I was younger, I used to smoke. I gave it up because of work, that sort of thing. The neighborhood, didn't want the neighbors seeing me. So
Mhm.
it's surprising how many people just come out of the closet.
Yep.
That's
So
the
let-
cannabis closet, just for the
No,
record. And,
cannabis closet. So Annie, how about you? How did you get into the cannabis business?
Wow, so much. Thank you so much. Portia, first of all, I'd like to say thank you. That was such a beautiful insight. I'm so glad to learn more about you, and also offer a little bit of a different side. I didn't realize that everyone was so supportive. So about 3 years ago, I was in the cannabis closet as far as publicly. I was growing in Humboldt since 2006, and in 2018, my husband fell ill suddenly. And so it was kind of, I own a roofing and construction company for 16 years. And it was a time that it was like, okay, well, life is short, you know, and in the hospital before he passed, we had the discussion of these doctors can't save my life. So, you know, this is something that you're meant to do. So you need to hit it hard. So when Sam passed away, March 23rd in 2018, it was a no-brainer. I just started to plug into the circuit where I met Sherri and just became immensely delved in the community of what was the evolving cannabis industry. And so, yeah, I produced the National Women of Cannabis Conference for 3 years, one of those being in Michigan, the other of those starting the MJ Biz Week, where Jimmy and I met, and we executed that and made it so beautiful. And then COVID happened. And there were some flaws that I experienced in kind of the conference that we had built. And I realized that there was a larger problem in the space of the feminine experience when it comes from one woman and another woman, in order to kind of find out what is our place in this space. And so when COVID happened, I went on a DMT therapy, psilocybin, and began to just really kind of search for answers that belonged to my soul. And I stopped kind of listening to everything else. And that's where Soil to Soul was born. And I executed Soil to Soul. We're up and going right now. And I was looking for a couple of collaborators and found Bruce Perloin. And man, the story is pretty big after that. So Bruce Perloin is the founder of Hemp Incorporated. And so we decided to collaborate so that Soil to Soul would have a forever venue. So one of the struggles that we had was trying to find venues that could host us in the time of a pandemic, but it was the largest need to heal people. And give them a different answer, because as you guys are all aware, our hospitals were shutting down. You know, mental health was at its highest. So we kind of found each other's dream was extremely the same. And I joined the team, and we're building big things. In May Memorial Weekend, we're hosting the One Love Festival here. And yeah, we're looking to bring just, you know, MJ BizCon. Shoot, if those guys are listening, hey, we'd love for you guys to come out here and see what we have going on. But yeah, I just, that's what happened. And the death of my husband through the hospitals catastrophically made me rethink my navigation through health.
And what does Soil to Soul do?
So Soil to Soul is a retreat entity that hosts retreats that are based on plant recovery, plant medicine recovery. So I'm sure you gentlemen have seen in the news that they're doing clinical trials right now with ketamine and MDMA. I believe through experience, not because I read in a book and someone told me, I believe that there is immense amount of healing through plant medicine and not just cannabis. And so Soil to Soul, we are collecting physicians and nurses and people from all over to come in and give their experience of things like neuroemotional technology, meditation, breath work, the basics, tools that we weren't given as kids from very young, you know, growing up with, you know, mothers that weren't attentive to emotional balance. So yeah, it's a retreat base that wants to bring in to show people who they are through plant medicine and get them off of their depression medicine, get them off of their high blood pressure medicine. And that is cannabis integration with, for myself, DMT, and utilizing the mimosa bark and utilizing psilocybin. And yeah, so that's what we're about, just calling the universe and those who feel the vibration to come in and find a space of healing, you know.
What kind of reaction did you get from people in your circle when you announced you were going into cannabis? Portia looks like she came through it pretty well without a lot of pushback. But
Portia, I think I would love to say to you specifically that that is such value for your family to support you is so valuable. You know, after Sam passed away, and that was determined, you know, I immediately enrolled into the cannabis training university while Sam was in the hospital. And it's just not something that my family received well. I've been using cannabis for so long, and it was labeled a drug. And, you know, my nieces at the age of 13, you know, right now call me a drug addict. So it's not the same everywhere. And I think that when you start to speak out and speak your truth, and that's just something that maybe they just don't understand, you know, and it's a bold thing to say, you know, I do have a child and I'm willing to sit in jail to show her that what our family line has been used to with depression pills and, you know, just bad behaviors on a mental level, you know, and beyond. So it wasn't well received. I don't talk to my mother. I don't talk to any of my sisters. And so, yeah, it's really tough, but I have one existence on this planet, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I know, so I have to push forward at all costs. And unfortunately, it looks a little different for me than it does Portia. Portia, if you could let your parents know, I'll cook them dinner.
Come to my family. I have 8 siblings. One more won't make a difference at this point. You know,
Yeah. Wonderful.
Like, you come to the reunions. You know, we love to have you.
You know, that's one of the big things about breaking this whole stigma about women in the professional space, even not talking about cannabis. Let's talk about construction. In that space, I owned that company for 16 years. And if you don't have the right tools growing up as a woman to know that you're valuable, to know you're powerful, to know you're not disposable, you're coming in at a disadvantage. So, you know, I think that it was so great, this conversation, because I think there needs to be light shed on the fact that you're dealing with a lot of women that have been in the space of medicine for a long time, but that just don't have the tools to do it right, you know. But I feel like one of the lucky ones, you know. I'm very in touch with spirit. I'm in touch with my guides. And that's something that, you know, I had to shut up and listen to myself and listen to kind of the things that were happening around me and really find a space where I could love myself and accept myself. And I think that's, Jimmy, you probably saw a lot of that transition happening through the National Women of Cannabis Conference. And so,
and you sound like a great disciple of the following of the Green Nurse and Sherri Tutkus, okay?
I love Sherri.
You're saying pretty much what always comes out of her mouth, and I think that's a beautiful thing. But Sherri, tell us a little bit about your story, the Green Nurse, and how, you know. Well, let's just leave it. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to let you go after that.
All right, here we go. So just like Annie had said, you know, the traditional system had failed her husband and he died. The traditional system failed me and I almost died. And I basically, in 2012, I got really, really sick, did everything that the doctors told me to do, but I'm also a holistic integrative functional health nurse. So not only did I follow the doctor's orders, instructions, take the pharmaceuticals, do the surgeries, but I did everything holistically as well. And nothing worked until cannabis came into my life. I didn't understand that I had an endocannabinoid system, and I didn't understand that it was completely depleted and not nourished. And so it was a 70-year-old nursing colleague friend of mine. So I'm a Reiki master, I do reconnective healing, and I work with a lot of energy healing modalities. She was one of my clients, and she knew I'd been sick, and I was suicidal, and I was on over 18 medications. I had, you know, anxiety, depression, all related to a chronic illness that I received while I was working. And so it was just one thing after another, circling the drain of despair. She came to my home and she came with a joint, 70 years old, a nurse, a retired nurse who taught at a university. And she held up the joint and she goes, "Sherri, get with the program." I'm like, "What? What do you mean get with the program? You're 70 years old and you're bringing me weed? Seriously? How could this possibly help for me when every single thing that I've tried to do hasn't worked?" And I literally thought I was going to have to go have an exorcism. I thought I was possessed, seriously. And she pretty much said to me, she goes, "Sherri, you've got nothing to lose." She goes, "You're dying." And I was every day. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I can't. It was horrible. You know, I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't work. I couldn't take care of my kids. And it was a nightmare. And it's really kind of a scary place to be in, knowing that you have an awful lot to live for, but you don't feel it. And that's what it was. So basically she just said, and she was right. I said, "I have nothing to lose. You're right." And so I smoked. And I felt the wave, the whole complete wave of pain start to dissolve and go away. And then I kept smoking. I was like, "This is great. I can't even believe this." And then I felt like my head was cracked open and consciousness poured in. And I was pulled out of the story of sickness, illness, trajectory of pain and suffering. And I was able to see things from a different perspective right away. And then I got mad and I was like, why didn't someone tell me about this? Why did I have to go through this? I don't understand why. And so then basically I got my medical card and I really started to delve into the plant, delve into the science. I was plagued with stigma, hugely plagued with stigma. My mom blocked me on Facebook. She wrote me out of her will. I'm not kidding. And so because I was plagued with stigma, I didn't know where to go. So I turned to the grassroots cannabis community. And this is where I want to give my thanks and my love to all of you, because they taught me stuff that I never would have learned in a book, never would have learned in a classroom, never would have learned in a webinar. And they truly are caregivers in the community. The grassroots community saved me. And they helped me to figure out how to make cannabis work for me in an appropriate way. And basically, I remember, sitting there learning, and I had all this cannabis and I'm trying to figure it out. And I basically said, gosh, if I can figure this out, you can call me the Green Nurse. And that's pretty much how the Green Nurse started. And I decided to start this. It's a home health consulting agency, whole health, home health. And what we do is we educate on the endocannabinoid system and all kinds of progressive tools that support and nourish the endocannabinoid system. We take care of patients, and we're expanding across the country. We also do a mentorship program where we are mentoring other health professionals, because you can incorporate cannabis education into anything that you're doing. And one of the most important things I have to say to any health professionals that are out there working right now and watching is that once you learn about the endocannabinoid system, once you go down that rabbit hole, you can't unlearn it. And the other important thing that people need to know is that every single thing that we do or don't do in our lives in regards to health, wellness, and lifestyle affects the endocannabinoid system, 100%. So doctors and nurses and health professionals truly need to have, it's an obligation to know about this. And so when patients are asking you about specific modalities or medications or different things, does it support and nourish the endocannabinoid system or not? And if it doesn't, are there any tips and tricks that you can give them so their endocannabinoid system doesn't become downregulated? And I'm not sure if that makes sense to anyone, but basically that's why I'm doing it. The other reason why I'm so propelled to do it and why I came out of the cannabis closet was in 2018, the National Council State Boards of Nursing, which is the nursing regulatory board in the entire United States. They put together the NCLEX exam that all nurses must take in order to be registered in their specific state. They wrote a 64-page document in the Journal of Nursing Regulations that said all nurses, all advanced practice nurses, and all nursing students must have 6 essential areas of clinical knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. That is a big deal. So that is what actually really propelled me, really lit the fire under my bum to really, really come out of the closet. So I was like, I'm either all in or I'm all out. I have to make a decision. And so I decided to be all in. And that's when I came out of the closet, started the podcast. And I've been educating ever since and really trying to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good, right? So, everyone's like, high, oh, I don't want to be high. I'm like, what is the matter with feeling good? And so we're trying to change the stigma around what it means to be high. So high, I've changed to
Benadryl makes you high.
What was that?
Benadryl makes you high.
Benadryl makes you drugged, makes you drowsy.
Well, this is the thing too, is then you start to feel guilty for feeling good. So the stigma was around, this plant's working. I'm coming off my pharmaceuticals. I'm feeling good. Uh-oh, what are they going to think? They. Who are they? Right?
And who cares about what they think anymore, right? It's all about inner strength, Sherri. Isn't that what you preach?
Hey, listen, I'll tell you.
We're
say that again.
We're taught to care. It's societal condition tells you to care. So you have to untrain that behavior and that belief in order to move past it. So I'm really glad we're covering that, because who are they? Line them up.
And why do they matter? Do they pay your bills?
Right. So it was really interesting, really, and cannabis is medicine, and I completely 100% am on board with Annie when it comes to psychedelics, because I am one of the founding members of the International Association of Psychedelic Nurses, and I'm one of the first 4 nurses trained with a new company that is going to be doing ketamine guided sessions. So, I look at cannabis as the gateway to other plant medicines that are going to truly transform people's lives, as it has mine. And so that's why I developed the Green Nurse, because I know, at the point in time when I tried to figure out, it took me 2 years to figure out how to make plant medicine and cannabis work for me so I could function below the threshold of being impaired. Granted, don't get me wrong, I love to feel elevated. There's nothing wrong with that. But, it's really, as a medical patient, it's about doing the best with what you can right here, right now, to live your best life and to function optimally. And so I knew that I wasn't the only one. I knew, and I said, you know what? I know there's other people out there. I know there's other nurses out there, that have chronic illnesses that have burnt out from nursing, and there's another way. And so that's why I've decided to take the plunge and to really step out into the cannabis space and do what I can. These are the last third of my life. I'm going to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sherri, I just want to say thank you so much. From one woman to another, like losing my husband in the medical system, you give up hope. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I won't take her to the doctor. So I just want to say thank you, man, like from the bottom of the depths of my soul, like thank you for standing up, because we need nurses to start getting pissed off.
Oh,
so thank you.
Yeah. And so it's, and it's just basically, one of the things too, is when I'm educating, I say, what, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't know that I didn't know it. So, basically I have a lot of empathy for health practitioners, nurses, and doctors that don't know this, because I'm telling you right now, once you learn it, you can't unlearn it, and you are going to completely 100% transform your patients' lives. Hands down, they will thank you. I mean, I literally, if I had known about cannabis sooner, I know that I would not have suffered as much as I did. And it was only 3 years of suffering, but let me just tell you, those are the longest 3 years of my life.
Long time. Yeah.
Do you guys feel that as females that you have a calling to help others? And do you identify with the fact that the cannabis plant, the real flowering plant with all those magical cannabinoids, is a female plant? This was an enlightening thing for me when I finally learned that there's actually a difference between a male plant and a female plant. Does that help the gender get into this?
Yeah, that's why it's called Mother Nature, because think about it.
Right.
That's right.
And then you have clones from the mother plant.
Right, exactly. But
it's so important. I think that Jimmy, you're touching on something there. I think that our creators, or whoever's looking up there watching us try to figure shit out, is looking down like the plant is a nurturer. It's medicine. It can reproduce. It is a stabilizer in emotion and soul. And I think that is so characteristic to women. We are natural nurturers. Even, I know Portia's had a beautiful, life, but I was never nurtured, and I'm a natural nurturer. So yeah, I think it speaks absolutely true to the plant.
yeah.
And it is amazing. And I love the Mother Nature comment too, Portia. That was awesome. Because I really do believe that this plant has been put on this earth to help others. And it's taken a lot of women like you guys and the next crew that we have coming on to explain that to people. And the beautiful thing, and Sherri, I know you know this, is you now have science and research behind your enlightenment that you can share with others, right?
Yes. And I got a great story too when it comes to people that are plagued with stigma. So my mother, I'm just going to quickly share my mom's story because I think it's really important. So my mom is Irish Catholic, really strict Catholic, was, really traditional. And when she found out I was using cannabis, she was not happy. She was, oh, I paid for Boston College and you're a drug dealer. So I said, not yet. I said, I'm just learning. Right? And then I said, how amazing is it that I came off of prescribed traditional pharmaceuticals using a federally illegal plant? That doesn't make sense. So anyway, so the story with my mother goes as follows. So I've been taking care of a nun. She's come on my podcast twice. And she had a really, really horrible disease called RSD, or which is it's a chronic myofascial pain syndrome everywhere, chronic regional pain syndrome. So she was on over 400 micrograms of fentanyl, okay? 400 micrograms of fentanyl in a patch every 36 hours, which is equivalent to probably 30 milligrams of morphine an hour, okay? 98 pounds soaking wet, a nun came to me. She also had an internal implanted neurotransmitter stimulator, and cannabis works on the neurotransmitters. So she was sick and she was suffering, and she literally would be in bed all the time. So we started taking care of her, and over the course of probably, it was like 20 months, she was able to come off of all of her fentanyl and off of all of her other drugs. She does take other medications, but not any opioids or any anti-anxiety agents or antidepressants, just using cannabis alone. And so I had her on my podcast, and every single time I have her on the podcast, I always ask her the question, Sister Suzanne, what would Jesus say about cannabis? And every time her answer is a little different, but it's always a little bit the same. And the first time she said, Sherri, Jesus would say, what the frig did it take you so long to get this God-given plant and not use it? And then the last time she said, Jesus would expect us to use it. He would think it would be a sin if we didn't use it. So it was just really interesting just to see the power of how this plant even impacted, this little nun who's, in her mid 70s, and how it's improved the quality of her life. And so my mother saw that. So that's why these stories are so important. These stories that we share are so important because they can save a life. And that's what led my mother to being open to cannabis. So she called me up a month later and she goes, what's the gateway? So we started her on topicals. Okay. So that's the thing is, so you evolve with people, you work with people where they're at. So she was on topicals for a month. And then she called me up. She goes, it could be better, couldn't it? I go, it could be a lot better. So we started her on broad spectrum and topicals. And then she went to full spectrum. And then she's like, I'm ready for the big guns. And so she started using some THC. And then, believe it or not, she wanted to see what it felt like to have an adult use experience. So I taught her how to do that. But she didn't listen, which makes it even funnier. So the next day I said, just eat one chocolate square, just one. And I call her up the next day and I go, how you doing? How was your experience? She goes, well, I didn't listen. I go, what do you mean you didn't listen? She goes, well, I ate one, but it tasted so good. She ate 3. And so I said to her, how was it? It was wonderful.
Oh,
It was absolutely wonderful. So this is from a woman that blocked me on Facebook and wrote me out of her will for a year. And now she is enjoying the benefits of plant medicine. Her stigma has been reduced, and it's all because we're sharing stories of, how this plant heals and decreases stigma by having people on that you would never think that would use cannabis.
absolutely. Hey guys, that was a very fast half hour because
We're done.
Stimulating
Wow.
conversation. It was awesome. I do want to quickly allow each one of you to have about 30 seconds to say, how can people get in touch with you? If they'd like to get in touch with you, find out more about what you're up to, give your website a plug. And of course, Sherri, we keep rolling your shows as much as possible. So, I'm sure you understand that too. And as you know, we're big fans of your work and Nurse Mark too. So let's start with Annie. Go ahead, Annie. 30 seconds.
Awesome. All right, guys, really quickly, I just wanted to make a quick statement. He didn't create the plant without creating the ECS. It's not a mistake that those work beautifully together. And the other thing is we're hosting the One Love Festival Memorial Weekend. So you can get your tickets and reach out to One Love at onelovefest.com and just take a look at them. Other than that, if anybody wants to experience out here at the Domes and live Retreat Life, give us a shout, 323-420-3335.
There you go. And Portia, go ahead.
All right, first I want to say, Amy, I'm serious. You can come join my family. We have like 4 other siblings that like aren't really blood, but you know, they get to wear a t-shirt at the reunion. So hey.
We are all one family anyway.
You can reach me at my name in the corner, Portia Mittons, Portia. That's what I am on Facebook, Instagram, any social media. I am Portia Mittons, and the only one in the world that I know of. So,
You're the only one I know. That's terrific. Sherri?
All right, so very good. So we are here for patients and we are here for providers. So if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic illness, chronic disease, if you're interested in learning how to incorporate cannabis into a wellness regimen, or even if you're new to cannabis and you're curious about having an adult use experience, we teach on that. We teach on the endocannabinoid system and how to use this plant to create the experience that you're looking for. We also work with providers. We do mentorship, and we're actually, like I said, expanding across the United States, and we're going to be looking for more providers to provide consultations in the different states that we're expanding to. So visit us at www.thegreennurse.com. And we do Monday through Friday weekly podcasts from 8 to 8:20 a.m. and every Wednesday night.
There you go. And
Great.
you can see those programs on our Pro Cannabis Media. I can't say where it's available yet because it's a soft thing, but trust me, everybody's going to find out about what we're up to very soon. But right now, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to thank Sherri, Portia, and Annie, and yeah, David too. And we're going to come back on the other side with some more women in cannabis. Don't go away. The Green Rush continues after this.
Hi, Jimmy Young here, and I have to ask you, are you secure? If you're in the cannabis industry, you have to have security for your grow facility or dispensary. And we are so happy to welcome Salient Systems to our group of supporters. You get to call their rep. His name is Ben Shower at SalientSys.com. So don't even wait an hour. Call Ben Shower at 413-333-7974. PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
I really enjoy what I do. There's a couple different reasons for it. First of all, I've always been an accountant, and it's kind of a nerdy thing to say, but I do love accounting. And I also love helping companies. I love helping people build their companies, especially small to mid-sized startups. I've always been someone that's, in all my roles in industry, it's always been building teams, building companies, building departments. And to be honest, I love working for myself and owning my own company. So I love what I do every day.
All right, welcome back to the Green Rush Live here on Pro Cannabis Media's social media network. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. I'm joined every Friday afternoon with David Rabinovitz. David, we are outnumbered in this next 60 minutes. You know that, right?
All right, Jimmy.
It's all right. We've got some great women in our midst, and I am so excited to have this room filled with some outstanding females who have made their mark in cannabis, with cannabis, or around cannabis. And instead of, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go right around the room. I'm going to start right on my list here. I'm going to start with Emma Chasen, who I believe is still in Oregon, right, Emma?
Actually in Oklahoma City right now, but based in Oregon.
I know you're based in Oregon, so you're in Oklahoma City. That's kind of cool because Oklahoma has like a dispensary on every corner, right? I mean, that's just right. She's with Eminent Consulting, but her base operation is Oregon. Jennifer Gaskin, is Jennifer here?
Nope,
or not?
Jen is not feeling well, Jimmy, so she's not going to make it with us today.
So Jen and Jamie Pearson are not going to be with us because they both are taken ill. We'll move on. But Sara Gullickson is here, and she's the founder and CEO of the Cannabis Business Advisors. Sara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about the Cannabis Business Advisors, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So we're a boutique consulting firm that's based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And not only do we help legislators put together their programming for medical marijuana or recreational programs, but we also help entrepreneurs secure licenses themselves. And then once they're successful in obtaining their license, we help them get to a point of actually opening. So we're busy.
Absolutely. Do you know Dimitri in
I
Arizona?
do.
I do. He's a legend, and we got to meet him last week. He was terrific. Samantha Montanaro is here, the CEO of Tokeativity. Is that accurate?
Hello. Yep. Tokeativity
Did I say
it
it
is.
right, Samantha?
You sure did.
Tell us a little bit about Tokeativity.
Tokeativity is the global feminist community for active cannabis culture. We're a global community of cannabis consumers and business owners that believe in cannabis normalization, equity, and empowerment of a modern consumption culture.
There you go. Unbelievable. And we have Mara Gordon with us, who's the co-founder of Aunt Zelda's, but Mara Gordon's reputation is known worldwide. And Mara, thank you so much for joining us again today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Jimmy and David. I don't think we've met. I look forward to hearing from you as well.
Me too.
Yeah. So what I do is science-backed data junkie, process engineer. I've been collecting data around patient usage and formulating for patients for over a decade. Built platform, have started a bunch of companies. Zelira Therapeutics now, which it used to be Zelda Therapeutics, and it merged with Alira 2019, co-founded that. We're on the exchange, and we just moved our global headquarters from Australia to Philadelphia. So lots and lots that I'm doing, working on my platform for doctors now. So happy to be here.
And thrilled that you're with us again. Appreciate it. And Dana Shoched is with us. Dana, I got your last name right this time, didn't I?
You did. You get $1.
Thank you very much. Tell us about what's going on in the O2 vape world, which I know you're right in the middle of a bit of a crisis, aren't you?
We are, but I'm the owner, president, and CEO of O2 Vape, and we are a vape hardware manufacturer, inventor, and distributor. We make a lot of the hardware for the multi-state operators, for the dispensaries, for the CBD and the hemp world. Basically, if you can vape it, we might make your hardware.
There you go. And hopefully somebody's going to be able to deliver it very soon because you're
it's pretty bad. So yeah, we're basically, as you said, we're in the middle of the crisis, which we talked about on your show, that they tucked something in the stimulus bill and they basically have now cut off the supply chain. And the one remaining thing that we still had as of that they had promised they weren't getting out of the delivery of being able to import for us. They just announced yesterday that they were stopping the importation and exportation, and that was DHL. So now that's UPS, FedEx, and DHL have all, and the Postal Service have all cut us off. So it's a big problem, but there is a coalition. We've got all the big players are in there. And so when I first talked to you, I thought, oh, nobody's talking about it, but everybody's aware of it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. There's going to be a big email campaign going out from all of the big companies, ours included, that are asking people to, write their senator, write their congressman, and postal service, and we'll see what happens. But right now we're kind of in a mystery stage here.
Well, we certainly wish you good luck.
But
and I'm glad we could
thank you for letting
share.
me be on the show again. Talk
I was
about
gonna
us
say, it's good to
women
be
in
able to
the
share that
industry.
story. There's something about injustices tied to cannabis that creates the passion for many people that are in the business. Okay.
Mhm.
And, I think this is a great kind of segue into getting into a little bit about this, guys, because, I know you're all female. I know you're all in business, but I also know that it isn't easy for females to make it in business, no matter where you are, whether you're in the corporate boardroom or you're even the CEO of your own company. It is not an easy trail, if you will, or a journey for you guys. And I use that "you guys" thing as a sign of respect, because we're all human. And I really do believe we come from one family of humanity. I don't care about the gender. I don't care about the race, the religion, the skin, nothing. Okay. We are on this earth together on this journey. And the more we talk, the more we communicate, I believe, the more we can all come together and find out common ground that actually binds us, as opposed to, takes us apart. Anyway, David, are you ready to ask a great question for the panel?
I've always got tons of great questions, Jimmy. You should see my desk. They're all laid out here.
Okay,
So,
ready,
so
go.
we're talking about women in cannabis. What have you found getting into the business that's been more challenging because you're a woman, and where have you found that it's given you an edge?
And call on one, David.
Emma.
Okay.
We'll call on the person who's muted.
All right.
So first of all, hi everybody. I'm super excited to be here. Hi Sam, and hi everybody who I am now meeting. This is awesome. A challenge for me about being a woman in cannabis, especially, I was 22 when I entered the industry, and I entered it through a bud tending position. And then I really began advocating for education and training, specifically around cannabis science and its purported effects in the dispensary model, and went out into the Oregon industry, really testing that thesis and curriculum that I built. And for me, it was more about reconciling and an internal conversation with myself around something that I was so passionate about, something that had, lit a fire inside of me in terms of, this is something that I feel that the industry needs. And then also bridging that into a sustainable business model where I actually could pay myself, feed myself, make it long-term. That was honestly the weirdest thing for me, especially because I was not used to, as a younger woman, advocating for myself in those spaces around, investment and finances. And it was something that was really intimidating for me. And so it ultimately came down to, a more internal conversation with myself around, no, this is something that's worth it. This is important. And point blank, in order for me to kind of continue on this road, then I needed to find a way to make sure that I was advocating not only for education in cannabis, but also advocating for myself and a seat at that table. What about kind of me as a woman gives me an edge? I think that just from the kind of female spirit and energy, and as you said, Jimmy, inclusive of gender, but I think that there's a collaborative spirit that comes along with that, tapping into kind of, networks and business families and otherwise openness to being able to find solutions together. And I think that is just so fulfilling and powerful. And I found that personally for myself through my work in the industry.
Great.
I'd love to jump in here and
Go, jump right in.
Okay. Emma, you that really struck a chord because, I have my own story, but as the co-founder of Tokeativity, which is this massive network of women who love cannabis, many of them are entering the industry or owning businesses. We hear all kinds of things all the time. It's an internal dialogue, and the lack of resources and support, and even, seeing yourself we didn't see ourselves in these roles growing up. This industry was an underground thing, and even women in executive roles, it was that's not something you were seeing super frequently. And recently I was so shocked. I don't know why it was so shocking, but you know, I saw some statistic that like only 10% of women-owned businesses across all industries make more than 150,000 a year. Okay, so how are you like employing anybody? How are you even paying yourself? That's before costs, right? So when, you know, when we have these barriers stacked against us with all industries, and then there's this, you know, this industry that's coming from underground, above ground, I think it's like, it's not surprising that one, women have a lot of challenges with cannabis business, but two, I think like something that's really incredible is the, you know, the feminine spirit behind cannabis. And you were talking about this with the other, you know, the other panel, this spiritual element and this femininity, this feminine energy that is like more powerful, I think, than any of us can really put into words. There's this epic combination happening right now where a lot of women, I think, are being empowered by cannabis in a way that nothing has ever empowered them before. And they're starting to feel fearless around breaking through those barriers and being like, you know what? I don't have a lot of capital. I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm smart and I'm super dedicated and I'm going to do this.
That's great. Sara, I'm sure that you have encountered a few stories through your career. Tell us a little bit. Yeah, how long do we have?
I'm not sure if you have enough time. You know, I mean, I think we're all aware of the struggles that, you know, women go through, not only being in the cannabis industry, which is male dominant, but being just women in general in business. When you factor in running a company, having families, household duties, and like the traditional roles that we all used to do and be, you know, 100% responsible for, you know, things get a little messy. I'm noticing a new trend, I would say, in the last like year and a half, where like when I'm negotiating big contracts or big deals, I feel like I'm typically the only one, usually always the only woman in the room. And I feel like the negotiations go a bit differently with me than if I were a male. And I don't want to like stand behind that. That just requires us to stand up and find our voice quicker. And so that we can, you know, be successful and we can, you know, potentially be more successful than some of the males in this space. And so, you know, there's so many different things that we experience differently than men. And that's just the nature of the beast. You know, on the positive side of that, we absolutely can use it to our advantage in the sense that women have all of these qualities because of their old traditional role in the house, and we can multitask and we can focus on different things, and you know, we can take care of people, which that's one of the foundations that the industry was built on. And so we won't forget that because a lot of women have that quality, you know, innate in them. Recently I became a mother. I have 2 small children, and you know, getting back into the working space and figuring out how to juggle all these different things, you know, it's intense, but it's amazing, and that's what makes us strong, and that's what makes us successful.
Absolutely. And I'm so familiar with that. And it is something always lost on men that, you know, they expect the woman to also balance the life. But, you know, I don't see as many men getting as involved in housework, and I'm going to be a little, you know, biased here, but there are some men, there are exceptions. No disrespect. I totally get that.
Absolutely.
But you're expected to be the mother and the child rearer. And I mean, it's extremely unfair. But Mara, I want to go to you because I know you have to deal with the medical community, which is still pretty dominant by males. Am I correct?
Yeah, you know, I'd like to, let's talk about this for a minute. So I've made my career in STEM, all right? I first was I was part of the whole .com movement and all the technology, where if you want to hear about misogyny, just go to garage startups in the .com world. So I developed a way of being in the world that's very much like, I don't bring a lot of feminine energy to what I do. I just bring expertise. And if I happen to have testicles or ovaries is irrelevant. And I make people stand up and listen to me based upon my expertise. And I know that's easier said than done, but it's like, you know, I've demanded respect through the years. I've demanded the kind of thing. I don't ask permission. I don't, you know, I don't go up at the end of my sentences. Like I'm waiting for assurance, which drives me insane. When I hear people do that, I want to say, bring it down, own what you're saying, you know, because if you own it, other people will believe you. If you act like you're asking for permission with what you're saying, they're going to think they have an opinion, and they're not entitled to it. So, you know, I raised a family. I have 7 grandchildren now at this stage, but like while I've been working all day, my husband just mopped the whole floor. So to your thing about gender roles, it's like he wasn't working and I was, so he did what needed to get done. I think that in the cannabis space, I consider myself part of the healthcare industry more than I do the cannabis space. I'm in healthcare, and cannabis happens to be one of the vehicles that we use to treat patients. And so it's like, otherwise, you know, I'm a hammer and everything's a nail. So which it's not, you know, sometimes it's not the right answer. And we want to make sure that we are clear about that so that we have more respect and more veracity around when we do recommend it. And as far as the medical community is concerned, I don't think it's as much about the fact that I'm not that I'm a woman as much as it's that I don't have an MD, because women, I mean, doctors treat nurses terribly, whether they're a male nurse or a female nurse. The way that they talk to them is terrible. As it is, physicians are my focus, because you got to get the physician, because the nurse is in most cases just fulfilling the instructions of the doctor. So it's important that that's who we talk to. So it's just like, you know, just show them enough science, show them enough facts that have nothing to do with who's the one delivering it, and it makes a huge difference. Now, women have been making the decisions for the households traditionally, certainly in our culture. Although the buying decisions around healthcare and nutrition and exercise, and even where they go on holidays. And so to not take the female perspective into account in the boardroom is nuts. It reminds me of, like, remember the movie with Tom Hanks, Toy Story, I think it was, and they brought the kid in to, you know, when he was a 12-year-old, and they brought him in, or when he was an adult, I don't remember. The
movie was Big.
Oh, Big. Thank you. Big. I'm not much of a aficionado, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
They brought in the child's perspective. Were they able to see what worked and what didn't? And we can do the same thing. And we don't have to do it apologetically. We can do it because we're more qualified, because we're the ones making those buying decisions anyway. So demand your seat at the table, because the table's not set unless we're sitting at it.
Right. And my goodness gracious, I have so many things I want to say here. The first thing I want to say is, as someone who has been in a few relationships in my life, some have broken down. Okay. So one in particular, the one I'm in now, has been awesome. And I've been in it for 20 years. And it is a challenge every single day, because we are different. We have differences, but isn't that what attracted us in the first place? For the most part, at least it did for me. And now I use a David Faraday expression all the time. He calls his life partner, his wife, she who must be obeyed. And I totally relate to that. She who must be obeyed, who was the breadwinner, who was the rearer of 2 children, who put them both through college. These were not my children, by the way, but she did all that. That earns tremendous amounts of respect from me as her partner. In fact, I feel belittled in many ways. That being said, we're still together. We work on it. We understand the challenges of it. And it's not something that just happens either. It used to happen when you were a lot younger, but it doesn't happen like that anymore. We recently, I heard, I think, Mara, you mentioned the word feminine. That word has been in the news over the last 24 hours. Just in case you didn't know, a certain commentator on a certain network was talking about women in the military. And
oh yeah, I saw that.
And you guys, I'm amazed that here we are again in 2021, and you're still facing this sexist ideologue out there. I mean, it's still, you have to still, it's not going to just go away, is it?
I just want to say that I think I've spent my enough time. I'm spot on with you, because I had somebody say to me one time, well, you bring a lot of male energy to the room. And I was like, F you.
I didn't know energy had a gender, by the way.
Energy to the room, and I happen to contain a well-balanced set of energy, and which one I'm drawing on at any particular time. It doesn't automatically, if it's powerful and strong and smart and science, it's male, and if it's soft and squishy, it's female. What an insult! What an insult to men and women, because my husband's a metrosexual. I like to say he's pretty balanced. And I think you are pretty balanced. I don't know you, David, but I'm going to guess
I'm not balanced at all.
balanced at all.
That's not true. I will back up David. Okay. I will back him up. He is very balanced. Okay. Dana, I want to ask you, you're a veteran.
I am.
Right? So tell me, what was your reaction when you heard someone at a certain network talking about that?
Well, I obviously don't follow his show, but I certainly have seen the clips and all the tweets and the people that have come out and supporting him. And I think I loved the one that was the woman fighter pilot that said, I flew how many missions over, Afghanistan or Iraq, and what did you do? So yeah, it is. And I mean, obviously for me, because I was in many moons ago, and it was even different then. It was still challenging then. I think it has gotten better for women in the military, but there is still a ton of the sexism and I go a lot of stuff like with what Mara was saying, that the energy, or don't ask for permission, or you don't talk with your voice going up like that the old adage that if you're aggressive in business, you're a bitch. But if it was a man doing the exact same thing that we did, they don't get that title thrown on them. You're a good businessman. You're a good salesperson. You're a good salesman, sales, whatever. But if you do it, because, I've been doing this for a long time. And it is a very male dominated industry here that we're in right now. So, and it's getting better though. I think it's getting better than it was 8, 9, 10 years ago. I like to see that we are seeing so much a diversity of women in this space as to what they are. CEOs, I'm looking at the Tokeativity or the bank from the Bang Corporation, although they're not here, that we're not just all making the edibles. We're not all in the kitchen doing the baked goods for the cannabis industry, that we can be CEOs. We can be the lab directors. I work with some of the lab directors on some of my, and they're females. And so I think it's phenomenal that we're making great strides, but I still think we have a long way to go. And comments that person whose name won't come off my lips made the other day, it's like, really? We're still there? Or what's happening with a governor in a certain state right now, that really, did nobody learn anything from the Me Too movement a few years ago?
Something really interesting with like the technology wave and like us all, like, right, all of this stuff has come to the surface, and now we're like, how is it still possible that women are in these spaces, right? Like, I don't know what it's like to be a Black person or to be a person of color, but like systemic racism and systemic sexism is very real.
Yeah.
And it feels tiresome already. And it's only really been not many years that all of this has been like common knowledge, right? I mean, people are learning at light speed rates now, and information spreads in milliseconds. Things happen so quickly. So it is a tiresome conversation. When is it going to be more equal? When is it going to feel more equal? When, as someone who works in the, like, specifically women in cannabis space, we talk about this all the time. It gets tiresome talking about why women are not respected in the same way that men are in cannabis business. It's annoying. It's frustrating. But like, we have to keep having these conversations until things look different, because there's a lot of men that still don't get it. And there's a lot of women that don't get it too. I love being a mother. I love being a homemaker. I loved being a wife. I'm newly divorced. Stoked about that too. But you know, like I loved being a stay-at-home mom, wife, and caretaker. I also love being a badass CEO who can literally do anything in business. I can do my own books, I can close deals, I can market anything, I can literally wear all of the hats. And I feel proud of like my ability to do all of those things. And I think, I don't know, the pressure shouldn't be for women to have to do all of those things. And I look forward to the day that it does just kind of feel from the get-go a little bit different. And for me, raising a son, I'm noticing how it's different for him. It is different. We're talking about gender differently. We're talking about, you know, the language and just what he's even seeing happen. He's seeing equality in his family. He's not seeing sexism in his daily life at home. So it's really interesting to think about the future and what the next generation is going to hold for us.
So true. David, I want to ask you, I just heard a comment, description, a badass CEO. Okay. And you and I have known each other for a long time. You know, I don't find myself as someone who likes to look at P&L sheets and Excel documents and projections and numbers and all the stuff that you need to be a CEO or a leader of a business. And I know an attitude is not gender specific. So I want to ask David, because he's had far more experience in business than I have. Do you have to be an asshole to be a CEO and be successful?
No, you don't, Jimmy. And you don't have to look at you don't have to know what all the numbers are. But you need to have somebody in your team who knows the numbers, who can explain it to you and boil it down so that you can make the right decisions, right? Numbers are just data points.
Right.
And I think that goes into the part about on the agenda that you had about the team that you have on your company. Nobody can do it all. I can't do it all. I'm not a numbers person. I mean, I can do bids and all that, but balancing the books, that's what I have a controller for. That's what I have tax accountants for. That's what I have tax lawyers for. I don't want to do all of that. Not that I couldn't. I can balance my own checkbook and things like that. But I think you have to have a team on your company that does that. You have to have the marketing person. If you have a website, you have to have the SEO person. You have to have a social media person. Now, obviously, you know, you have to have a great sales team, you have great customer service, whatever you have, your shipping department. I mean, you know, you have to have every one of those spokes in your wheel to make your wheel be able to go around perfectly. And you just have to get those.
Emma, as an entrepreneur, it is a challenge when you do have to do it all yourself if you don't have a team around you. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think to Sam's point too, it gets tiresome where it's just how much am I willing to fight for this seat or for this deal? I mean, I was very strategic in choosing a male business partner, and I love my business partner for many different reasons. He brings a lot of strengths to the table, but I wanted somebody who had a male name in his signature on an email if we were going to be fighting for a deal. And I just wanted to tap out. And so that's important to me. I think that playing the system, because we do live in a patriarchal, systemically racist, systemically sexist system, that playing that to get, you know, capital to then be able to go out and execute what I want to go out and execute. There's no shame in that. I even have heard of, and I applaud the tactic of having a male virtual assistant, where in hard negotiations, women will actually take on an identity through, you know, email and use a male name in the signature. And from a data perspective, they've seen a much easier go of it when it comes to negotiation. And so for me, I empower women, I empower myself to kind of use men in that regard, to use that, you know, and play the system in a way that's going to be in your favor. And, you know, of course, one of our guiding kind of mantras within my company is that, you know, elevate the ecosystem, and that a diverse ecosystem is going to generate the strongest results. I mean, we see that from, you know, cultivation in cannabis all the way through to human behavior. And so by pulling on the different resources that you have within your ecosystem and cultivating that kind of diversity, I think that, you know, you can get the results that you want to.
To touch on something that you said, if I can, real quickly, about the name. That's funny that you mentioned that. And when I was talking about building a team, I didn't have any of that stuff when I first started. I was doing it all. I mean, I had to be sometimes, and I'll really age myself if you if I give this reference, but it's kind of like you would answer the phone and you would say, hello, thank you for calling O2 Vape. And then it would be like, oh, you want to need customer service? Hang on. Hello, this is customer service. I mean, you would have to change it because I was a company of one when I started. So
That's
I
right.
was wearing all of the hats and doing that. And fortunately now I've grown my business to where I can have people that do the other things for me. Somebody else answer the phone, somebody else do the books. But it's funny what you mentioned about the name, because I change and I don't hide who I am, but I've never, for myself, I've never wanted to play the woman card. Okay. Because I empower women. I'm a veteran. I have veterans on my staff, but there are times when I will change my signature, and I have a unisex name. Obviously you can't do it if you only have my name. You can be a male or female with the name Dana. And I always go by my middle initial, but if I want someone to know I'm a woman, I will put my full middle name in my signature line. If I say, oh, hey, we got a contact form in for a woman-owned company, like we got one today, I will write back and, that it's coming from me. But then when sometimes it's like, we do our research on who might be calling us for wholesale and wanting us to white label or do their hardware. And it's like, Kelly, who's a male, or Zach or Seth, or why don't you guys take one of these? And sometimes like, if they call a woman and they'll find out the woman they're talking to is the owner, they will say, oh, we have a woman that owns our company. And then they're like, oh, you do? Because us women have that kinship sometimes where we want to support each other. But I just thought it was funny that you mentioned that about the name in the email.
I heard access to capital, and I'm going to ask Sara. I think this is a good time to bring her back in here to talk about, do women have the same access to capital that men do? Because I don't think I'm saying anything wrong here. Men are still controlling a lot of the capital that is out there in the investment world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes along the same theme as everything else, where you just work a little harder. I mean, I can't use that as an excuse, just because that would stop me from crossing the path and getting to where I need to go. So, I mean, I haven't been a man before, and I have never had a male counterpart. And we've, always been able to raise the capital, and, we often help men raise the capital in a support role as a consultant. And for me, it's, whatever gets the job done. If they want to see me get up and talk and want me to control the floor, that's fine. If they feel a male would be better placed, it's unfortunate, but it's something that exists. And so it's important to acknowledge it, but it's also important, especially for women out there that are watching this, that are like wanting to start a business or wanting to go out on their own. For me, it's always been really important to be, kind of the voice of reason in the back. That's like, you can do this. You can do this. You might have to work a little bit harder, and that's unfortunate, but it's our reality. And so instead of using it as like an excuse, get out there and get it.
Yeah, it seems to me that not only do you have a stigma and a systemized system working against you, and then you throw in the cannabis world, it is a tough road to hoe, isn't it? And I'm going to go back to Mara here for a second, because I know that you have had such an incredible career, and you've saved people's lives. I mean, your reputation in the business is legendary, and I don't mean to embarrass you in any way, but I guess my point is, is there a calling here for females because the plant is female? Do you feel a calling at all, Mara, at all?
No, I don't. In
It's
fact,
the second time I've asked you that,
so
by the way. It's the second time you said that.
uncomfortable.
Go ahead.
I look at it as science. I look at it as chemistry. I look at it as math. I look at it as data points. And as soon as it turns into this foo-fooey fluffy, all of our credibility just went bye-bye, and I think the reason, and thank you for saying that about me. I mean, all I know is I got up this morning and I had the milk was sour when I went to make a cup of tea. That's it's like chop wood, carry water, it's like, life goes on and you still live your life no matter how you're perceived. But I've actually was at a medical conference. I'm gonna tell you one time, I was at a medical conference one time, and a doctor who's not very well respected in the industry by those of us that are solid scientists, she got up and she started talking about the magic of the plant and this and that. And I watched the male physicians and the male scientists in the room just completely shut down. They stopped listening. She lost anything that she said from that point forward that may have been beneficial, whatever, it was just lost. Why women are so perfectly aligned with this is the same reason that we're perfectly aligned with anything else we want to do. Because there's a place in cannabis that belongs for teachers, accountants, attorneys, manufacturers, cultivationists, geneticists, you name the field, and there's a place for it in cannabis. And anything that we can do in any other field, we can do in cannabis. In addition, take into the fact that we are the ones that are already owning this as the purchasers out there, so that our understanding of it is so much better. I was at a conference a few years back, and it was right after the documentary Weed the People came out. And there was a gentleman there who is a big investor in cannabis. And for years, our paths had been crossing. We had been in the same place. And you know how you as women will know exactly what I mean when I say this, when their eyes would just kind of pass over you to the next person, just kind of like as if you didn't even exist. And then all of a sudden he honed in on me and wanted to talk to me, wanted to tell me all about his project and everything. Of course, I had a long memory of how he had treated me before I was on the big screen. And I didn't really have a lot of interest. And I said, oh, that sounds very interesting. No, thank you. I'm not interested. And just, blew him off. But I think that.
And didn't that feel good? Come on. Felt good.
Oh, you have no idea.
I think
no idea how good it felt.
I think
I
was going to say one thing too, that bothers me a little bit in the industry, and I just won't do it. And we all know the term sex sells, right? Okay. Why is it the women, and I will not do it. And I'm not going to mention some of my competitors that do. And you look at their social media and they've got they've almost turned into soft porn sites. Okay. Women in bikinis and, and holding the vape pen in between their cleavage. And it's like, almost like the looks that you see of when you went into go like a motorcycle shop and like Harley Davidson or whatever, they always have the biker babes and whatever. And why do we have to do that? I know sex sells, but I won't do that. I will not let our social media person, do that. And I hate how that, because I think that's not helping. If we're objectifying the women in the cannabis space, that's not going to help us get to that more that, hey, we're not just the sexy bud tender. We're not just the person that's, you know what I mean? Are you with me, women?
Yeah. Oh,
with me, ladies?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to comment here on both on a couple things that have been said. Like, I completely agree of like, we've got to do better than that. Like, we know sex can sell anything to a certain type of demographic.
Sure.
To another type of demographic that's an immediate repeller. Like for me, I'm not buying those products, right? Because they're not speaking to me. But I wanted to comment on like, I think something that is really important is like, we do need to talk about cannabis, with science and with facts and to keep it, we're in this transition of normalization, which is a really essential time for us to, especially as women in the industry, to show that we're serious about this and that we understand not only the physical sides of this, but the greater social impact. But I think something that's really interesting is like, I believe cannabis and the industry provides an opportunity for innovative solutions to many of society's greatest issues at hand, including environmental sustainability, systemic racism and sexism, mental and physical health and wellness, equality of the sexes, and spiritual liberation. So like the foo-foo comment, like I have been that person who has said something foo-foo and have watched the energy change around who I'm talking to. And to me, that speaks to where that individual is coming from within their own comfort of their own spiritual liberation and comfort around the conversations of like, different people have different spiritual beliefs. And, Catholicism and this like, white supremacy based in religion really ties into all of this, because spirituality in itself has been completely, that's something else that's been like tampered by, you know, by the patriarchy, is like being a spiritual being that is one with nature. Why were all the witches burned? Like, it is a witchy plant. I'm sorry. It's one of the most powerful plants on the planet, including psychedelics. And I think this will come later, but I'm excited to be on the edge of that, because I'm foo-foo as hell around it, but I also know the numbers and want to, you know what I'm talking about. But I think that that's an interesting thing we'll see in the future, is the conversation around spirituality and how and why it makes you feel a certain way. And that's okay to get a little lovey about it. It's also important, again, to understand the data and science behind what the hell you're consuming and what you're recommending to for someone else to do as well.
It depends on the context, Samantha.
Definitely.
Believe me, I am just as spiritual, foofy, whatever. I do my ayahuasca journeys. I do my MDMA journey. I mean, believe me, 100%. But if I'm in business and I'm trying to talk to a group of physicians about why they should start supplementing the opioids that they're giving patients with cannabis, I'm not going to talk about how liberating and foo-foo-y it is. I'm going to talk about, dopamine receptors, and I'm going to talk about the endocannabinoid system and what happens with the CB1. I mean, know your audience. And I think that we have a tendency as women to kind of put it all together, and we'd be better off segmenting some of those discussions to have more credibility in the space. That's the only thing and if you want to have a sidebar over coffee at the break, that's awesome.
I appreciate
that. I didn't step on any toes with that, yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of mirror that, you in business and in small business specifically, you have to be somewhat of a chameleon. And that doesn't mean that you're not authentic. It means that you really have to understand your audience. You have to understand who you're talking to, what their motivation is, what they will be receptive of, what they won't be receptive of. And you can bring to the table that conversation based on your analysis of your environment. And I think that makes the strongest CEOs. I can't tell you how many times people have been like, the pandemic and how horrible was it for you? And I said, the pandemic tested every single CEO and every single business owner so that we understood how to reinvent ourselves and how to get through a difficult time where people didn't want to spend money. And specifically for us, I mean, there were supposed to be 11 states on the ballot initiative last year, and only 5 went. So it was still a great year for cannabis. We still have 5 states to work in this year. We don't have 11. So I can look at it and I can say, oh, dang, my numbers aren't good because I didn't have 11. It's like, no, we had 5. Make the best of those 5 and become a chameleon and become powerful within yourself to tackle whatever's brought in front of you. And that's the way I think that we need to look at it and come together and work together and get things done.
But I agree with some of what Mara was saying about, know your audience too, because I used to be a pharmaceutical sales rep in toxicology, and I did that, and I called on physicians for years. And the way I tried to educate physicians about the products I was selling wasn't the same to every physician, because if they were an analytical person, or if they were a more, you had to know those 4 of the personalities to do that. If you've been in sales and anyone's ever taken any of the mirroring and how you mirror them, if they're standing, you stand, if they sit, things like that. But you had to be able to talk differently. And it's funny because Mara, the difference too, like I would see sometimes how some of the docs would react to the females versus how they would react to some of the males. And this is going back a little bit different and some, different the way it was when they were whining and dining and all the women were like, oh, doctor, come to my event and come to my golf outing. And before, when you could do all that stuff with the doctors, and I never did any, I just sold on what it was, but you did have to change your style to how they were. Some people wanted more just tell me the nuts and bolts. Some people wanted more they wanted the science. They didn't care anything else, just show me the science. Show me your double-blind placebo-controlled studies. What does it say? Where was it published? Who peer reviewed it? Who did this? Who did that? So just agree a little bit on that.
I heard a description that we're moving towards normalization. As you guys all know, as the room all knows, I gotta stop using that. Sorry.
Yeah,
As
I don't
all
take
of
offense to that.
as all of
Say
you
y'all.
women know,
Just say y'all.
say y'all. Oh yeah, that's right. I like a Yankee in Boston's gonna say y'all. Okay. Anyway, point is, we're moving to. We think there'll be cannabis reform in the United States at the federal level in a period of time. Let's say whether it's the year, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 3 months, whatever.
You saw Mexico legalized night before last, right?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Did you see that Mexico passed full
Yes.
legalization night before last?
By the way, you'll see that on We Talk News following this talk show.
Okay.
So there you go. We didn't miss that in our little news that we do. But I've been talking, David, you can join in on this because I know you know who I'm talking about. There are some people out there who don't think the federal government is ready for legalization right now, and that there should be certain steps before you get there. There's a fear of big pharma. There's a fear of big alcohol. Where would you like to see reform, and what steps would you like to see it in? Because as someone who has an MRB, a marijuana related business, the first thing I want to be able to do is actually do business with banks. That is still the most important thing to me, even as a little businessman. So
I'm the director of North Bay Credit Union. We're giving bank accounts. We've been giving bank accounts for years to cannabis businesses.
I'm in a credit union. I love credit unions. I get it. I'm not but still, and there's even light in the IRS with the head of the IRS saying we should be able to do digital payments from the cannabis industry. So again, I want to go around the room and I want to get your feelings about where you would like to see reform and how quickly. And go ahead, Dana. You're go ahead. You go first, Dana.
Me?
Yeah,
you.
That's Dana.
And I don't want to. I think we talked about this on your show. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. My fear is what you just said about full legalization. It's already happening as far as big pharma and big tobacco. Altria bought how much into Kronos? How many billions? $1.9 billion. I just saw another article today. British Tobacco just bought in to something. I don't know how many billion that was. I would like the banking. That's the big thing, to where I would love the clients that I work with that don't have to run around for 3 days and gather money orders to be able to pay for their product. That's a bit ridiculous at this point, but yet they still have to pay for their taxes. But I am terribly afraid. You've already got, GW Pharma sold for how many billions of dollars, 600 billion or whatever, with their Epidiolex. I do feel that big tobacco, big alcohol, big pharma, they are there just waiting. And the same thing about when you reschedule it, if it goes down to the 2, which we need, it should not be a 1, but you take it down to there, and now you're going to have that's my fear. But I would like the banking. I would like that. I would like the taxes. I would like to be able, for everyone in this industry, to be able to use the same tax deductions that other businesses do, but they say, oh, you can't use that as a deduction because you're in a marijuana related business or whatever. There were people who weren't able to get the you couldn't get the paycheck protection, the PPP, if you were, you're a federally illegal business. Yep. Well, wait a minute, you deemed me an essential business, and that's why I got to stay open, but you won't give me the loan.
Well, that's the difference between the states and the feds. Hey, Dana, one of the things you want to keep in mind, if they reschedule or deschedule, you do not want it on Schedule 2. Schedule 2, you're still going to
know that.
280E.
Oh, sure, I know that. I mean, I sold narcotics I know, I'm very well aware of the differences of the schedules, but I'm just saying, even no matter what you take it to, you're still opening up more of the door. You might still need a prescription to get it, but it's still going to be able to be in big pharma. If it's off of the 1, no matter what level it comes to, it would be able to go into pharma.
I think something interesting that maybe we should even be thinking about prior to banking is our criminal justice system reform. There's still people rotting in prison.
Oh, for sure. I'm sorry. I agree with you on that. We're part of the Last Prisoner Project. We, help. Yep. So exactly.
And I think that's so. It's interesting how, as the industry is evolving, that this is it's kind of over here. Where it's like, wow. And it depends on where you are. Like local municipalities are making decisions around, social justice. But I think, when we're looking at reform going forward, banking is obviously a huge one. But I think like really overhauling our criminal justice system and having automatic expungement baked into this is really important. Here in Oregon, we have the Cannabis Equity Act, which is a House bill that is working to dedicate something like, I think it's $100 million towards supporting communities of color. And this is the first bill that has introduced legislation that, I don't think it's the first bill that's ever done this, but they did it on purpose to specifically name Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities in the bill, because if they don't, it's going to get whitewashed like everything else, and the money is never going to meet the communities that need to be where it is the most. But I just wanted to jump in, and that's kind of my two thoughts on where we need to see the most reform. And I think
that's why it needs to be fully decriminalized.
Yeah, I completely agree.
We all agree on that. Emma, what would you like? What do you say? We'll get to you, Sarah. Emma, what do you think? Where would you like to see the changes be at this point?
Yeah, I'll echo Sam. I think that's the number one thing. Release people who are still in jail for cannabis crimes, period. People are profiting off of this industry quite a bit, and releasing prisoners doesn't necessarily directly correlate to billions of dollars of profit. So I get, in America, why that's not at the top of the list of reform. However, it absolutely should be if we want to participate in an ethical industry. Apart from that, banking, interstate transfer, I think would just strengthen communities. There is no reason why people in New Jersey should be, growing pounds in warehouses when there's beautiful surplus in Oregon and California. I also think that we need to make it safe and accessible for healthcare providers to begin to join these conversations without risk of losing their license, so that we can kind of move the needle in terms of getting people access to this medicine who deserve it. So, if I had to name kind of my top, I guess that's top four things, that would be it. But I'm definitely also cautious of the FDA. I don't think that they're in a position yet to even begin to understand how to regulate this from, how big the United States is. It seems like just a task that's kind of futile and ridiculous ultimately. So the release all prisoners from jail, banking rights, repeal of 280E kind of lumped into that, interstate transfer, and making it safe for healthcare providers to be able to have these conversations with patients.
Sarah, you're up, Sarah.
Those are all really, really amazing points. And I definitely agree with a lot of what was said. A lot of times when clients come to us, they ask about it and they're like overly excited about the thought of it. And as a concept, I think that it sounds good. But if we look at history, which history tends to repeat itself, is California is the best example that we can use. And when California went from, kind of Wild West and a municipality ran type of program, and then when the state decided to, get involved and start to take tax dollars, which is obviously necessary, and I understand that, it was so clumsy for a long time. I would say 2-3 years, and it's still kind of getting its legs, and it's still kind of evolving, because I don't understand how in any world that would work where you have pretty soon all 50 states that are going to have their own rules and regulations, and then you write something that sits on top of each state, and then you have to be compliant with that. That is going to put hundreds and thousands of businesses out of business, and that's not what we want. So that's like always very interesting, and it's an interesting conversation to me, in the sense that, how are we going to penalize the people that have dumped millions and millions and millions of dollars into these facilities and are, doing a beautiful job at it, and then get the feds involved and everything crash and burns. So I don't claim to be one of the smartest people in the industry, but I'm sure it's going to take you know, a lot of really sophisticated people, which is probably not going to happen, to put something together that would benefit the people that are already here and already, you know, have market share in the industry.
And Mara, you get to have the last word. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with everything that everybody said, with a couple of caveats here and there. I do believe that the MSOs needed to be added to that list of big pharma, big tobacco, and big liquor. And I think that the MSOs, the big MSOs, are not the ones that are producing very good products. And at the end of the day, the ones that suffer are the consumers and the patients. You know, I'm only on the science side of things. I'm not involved in the recreational, the adult use and all that. That's a whole separate industry. It just happens to use the same raw material. At the end of the day, what we're doing is science. We're doing medicine. We're doing serious medicine. And to have that by the person who did a really good job, or the group that did a really good job of raising money and doing a bunch of white labeling, co-packing across the country, to be the ones that are going to be determining the quality of the pharmacy. If you think about it as a pharmaceutical, do you really want that to be who's making your medicine? Because we do need, thank God for pharmaceuticals. I'd be dead without them. I mean, I need them every day. I just don't need them for everything. There's a lot of things that cannabis can replace. I think that cannabis also needs to own its own piece of it in the nutraceutical space, and stay in the nutraceutical space, and stay and in the biopharmaceutical space more than in the pharmaceutical space. FDA does have a track for biopharma, and that's where I feel very strongly that we should be driving this instead of into, because as soon as we try to turn this in, we already have Marinol. It's one and done. We've already created a pharmaceutical out of cannabis, and it sucks and nobody wants it. So let's not try to go there. So I do believe that it needs to be completely descheduled so that we can get it into the right track, into the nutraceutical track. Banking, we're working on it. We're doing our best. We're making lots of, we're helping.
If you put it into the nutraceutical track, I mean, I actually sold, in part of my career of selling, I sold prescription vitamins that were not and the FDA, we were regulated because they were pharmaceutical grade vitamins, but most vitamins aren't. So if you go on that path, then, you pick up a bottle of vitamins at Costco and you hope that what's in there is what's in there, because they're not regulated.
Well, you're right, but the FDA does have a nutraceutical track. Just most people don't, most companies don't follow it. They just go ahead and put a warning on there saying the FDA has not approved this for any use. For example, with Zelira Therapeutics, we have products that we've put through clinical trials in Australia for insomnia. It's now being introduced to as it turns out, I developed that at Aunt Zelda's, sold it to Zelira, we've trialed it, and now we're bringing it back. So a little bit of pleasure on that one, but where it's being introduced to the marketplace is Zenivol. Now it can make clinical trial claims, yet we're still doing it as a full spectrum whole plant medicine, because we're not going for FDA approval. In other countries outside of the US, they have these additional tracks with the TGA, for example, in Australia and in South Africa, where we're manufacturing, we're licensed as well. So I just think that people need to try to stop trying to fit this into the tobacco, the alcohol, the pharma, and treat it as what it is, which is a complicated product, medicine that has a myriad of chemical components within it, and realize that we can have the opportunity to carve out our own track. I have one last thing, please, Jimmy, let me share.
Go for it.
When I go to do business with a company, or when people approach me, because I cannot even tell you how many offers I get a day to sit on people's boards and to sit on their things and do business with them because they want to have that extra gravitas. I look at their about us, I look at who they are, and I look at what positions they have women in and people of color in and others. Are they just a bunch of white guys and they stick a woman on there so they can say, yeah, we've got a woman? I mean,
in the marketing or human resource department.
always, or their admin. And it's like, you know what? If they don't lift women, I don't lift them. They don't lift people of color. I don't lift them. And just, sometimes it's a bummer because these are companies that I would, really like to do business with. But you know what? You're not doing what needs to be done. And we gotta be consistent with that, even if it hurts our own pocketbook.
Fantastic way to end, Mara Gordon, as usual. I so appreciate all of your input and your time this Friday. We could probably talk for hours and hours and hours, but I know we all have lives that we have to balance, our work and our life, and it's never easy. I don't care what stage you're in or what relationship you're in. It's a journey, this life thing that we're all on, and just remember, we're all in it together. That's the beautiful thing, and the fact that we're actually talking openly about cannabis and cannabis reform and social justice and women's roles. And it all relates back to this plant that has been around for thousands of years. And we're finally noticing it. And it's slowly becoming more and more accepted. And anything that we can do here at Pro Cannabis Media, we are welcome to hear anything about it from you, from the people in this room and the people that are watching this show. So again, I just want to thank everybody, Emma and Jennifer and Sarah and Samantha and Mara and Dana and Jamie, feel better. And David, thank you as always for coming up with these great ideas, because it really has been your ideas and your themes that has put together this whole thing. And we thank Isabel for that, right? David, unmute yourself, David. You can't just do talking. You have to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Isabel does a great job. She's our production lead who pulls all this stuff together.
She is a producer. I don't even want to call her a production coordinator anymore. She's a producer, and they are the bosses. By the way, there might be a lesson learned there as well. That's why March is Women in History Month. We salute you all. Thank you all for watching. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there, and Weed Talk News follows this with our lead story about a woman who opened a dispensary in Boston with all run by women. And it's an awesome story about seed. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to watch that, and we'll be back again next week. Thanks for watching.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, we celebrate women in cannabis with the story of Seed, a women-owned and operated dispensary that is now open in Boston. Believe it or not, only the third adult-use store in the entire city after 2.5 years. Plus, Curaleaf enters the European market. Deborah Borchardt with that story. Plus, Merrick Garland gets approved as Attorney General of the U.S., and Phil Adams tells us if that's a good thing for cannabis reform. On We Talk News, next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. So, did you know that March is Women in History Month? We certainly do here at PCM, where we will be dedicating Friday's Green Rush live show to women in the cannabis business. Now, over the past 2 years, I've met a lot of people in this industry, but none have been more impressive than the women I've met. They're doctors and nurses and mothers and partners and CEOs, researchers, investors, scientists, and they have even carved out a very important role in the emergence of cannabis as a viable business as business people. Now, there's one woman who's launching a dispensary that is owned, operated, and backed by women in the city of Boston. Seed is only the third dispensary to open in Boston and is one of the most impressive to date for many reasons. One, its location at the Circle in one of the city's most diverse neighborhoods in Jamaica Plain, located in the basement at 401 Center Street. Another reason, though, 81% of their investors are minority and local. 72% are women, and some have even spent time in jail for cannabis possession crimes. The most powerful differentiator for Seed is their dedication to the story of injustice in the failed war on drugs and their social justice museum exhibit called American Warden.
Current exhibition is called American Warden. It's really trying to help people, consider the concept of incarceration in general and then also to give voice to those people, particularly local people, whose lives have been impacted by the war on drugs.
April and her COO, Perry Higgins, gave me a little walking tour of their dispensary this week before their grand opening on Saturday, March 13th. The most striking element in the Seed interior is a real jail cell, symbolic of some of the horrific stories about unjust incarceration, including a narrative from the late Peter Tosh's daughter, Nyimbi McIntosh, who was on the curation committee for Seed's museum exhibit.
From Belmont, these were actual jail cell doors. And then inside the space, we have Naomi telling the story of her brother Jawara, who lost his life to the war on drugs just this past summer.
You'll also find a tour of the terpenes that steer the cannabinoids in the cannabis sativa plant, and a wall of tribute to many musicians who have spent time behind bars for cannabis crimes. Seed is worth the trip to JP for so many reasons besides their selection for sale. So here's a pre-roll from Seed from Bountiful Farms. First non-plastic container I've seen for pre-rolls. And for those of us who have arthritic fingers, Seed, this is a very cool holder. It's not plastic. I think it's glass of some kind. Anyway, Seed is setting a great example of the real reform of cannabis laws, and if you give these economic empowerment applicants an opportunity, they'll blow you away with their abilities. Now, another reason to salute women in cannabis, one of our own favorites, is the Green Market Report's Deborah Borchardt, who has this week's look at the big business of cannabis in this country. Deborah?
The cannabis industry's fear of big tobacco trying to elbow into the industry has finally come true with the announcement of a $175 million investment into Organogram Holdings from British American Tobacco, or BAT. The BAT subsidiary has subscribed for approximately 58.3 million shares of OGI, which represents almost 20% equity interest. We had a lot of earnings this week. We're just going to hit a couple. Curaleaf Holdings reported its managed revenue increased 186% to $233 million. For the full year, their revenue grew 161% to $653 million. Air Wellness reported revenue rose 48% in the fourth quarter to $47 million. They also trimmed their operating losses to $2.2 million. Aurora Cannabis filed a new preliminary short-form prospectus to offer up to $1 billion in securities. And that's the big news this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt with the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
As one of the first states to legalize cannabis, Colorado has already established itself as a friendly market for the cannabis investor and user. Now that state can boast that the size of their cannabis market has reached the $10 billion plateau since its inception in 2014. That's when Colorado was the first state to legalize adult use of cannabis. Now, interestingly enough, with all the concerns about the effects of opening adult use markets would be tied to an increase in teen use? Well, guess what? The exact opposite has happened in Colorado, where recent polls and research have found that consumption of underage teens in Colorado has decreased during that time. Truman Bradley is the executive director of the marijuana industry group in Colorado. When asked about this $10 billion milestone, he said, quote, "It's a testament to the thoughtfulness and the foresight that early lawmakers, regulators, and industry stakeholders had in coming together to create a safe regulatory model," unquote. Now, one of those regulators was attorney Brian Vicente of the law firm Vicente Cederberg. Guess what? He's my guest on next week's In the Weeds podcast with yours truly. Don't miss that one. And you don't want to miss a new contributor to Weed Talk News from Michigan. Rick Thompson heads up the Michigan Business Development Group, and he has this week's report from the Great Lakes State. Rick?
Yes, I'm Rick Thompson from MICBD with this week's Michigan report for Weed Talk News. $45 million was awarded by the state's marijuana regulatory agency to deserving and underfunded agencies this week. $11.6 million goes to the School Aid Fund, and an equal amount goes to the Michigan Transportation Fund. The regulatory agency will keep $12.5 million for themselves, and the remaining $10 million is distributed between local communities and counties where adult use cannabis is sold at retail. Each community is expected to receive $28,000 for each adult use cannabis retail shop. Washtenaw County is expected to receive $616,000. The taxes derived from cannabis sales only, as we eliminated the medical cannabis tax when passing the adult use law in 2018. One of America's biggest cannabis events have moved into a digital format. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Hash Bash, and, like last year, the celebration has turned into a cyber stream. Key speakers for the bash include Michigan's governor, the attorney general, a congresswoman, state legislators, and athletes representing all of the nation's big four sports industries. Not to be overlooked is the man for whom this event was created, the legendary John Sinclair. The 3-hour broadcast begins at noon on April 3rd and can be found at the A2 Hash Bash channel on Twitch. Well, that'll do it for this week's Michigan Report. I'm MICBD's Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News.
Checking in on other states who are looking to reform their cannabis laws, Hawaii's Senate approved 2 bills that are now headed to their House of Representatives. One is to open adult use of cannabis to the over 21 community. It also includes a 6-plant per adult limit to be grown at home. Another bill is looking to ease up on the current possession law that is limited to just 3 grams in Hawaii. That change would increase the limit for possession to 30 grams. It is already decriminalized in that state. Now, let's go to the Green Mountain state of Vermont with the Green Nurse from Vermont, Jessie Lynn Dolan. Jessie Lynn?
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. Northeast Processing, Vermont's first high-throughput medicinal hemp and botanicals testing and processing facility, has recently closed. Northeast Processing has applied for bankruptcy, resulting in many unhappy Vermont hemp farmers. Whether they are owed money, their extract and products, or their hemp flower returned, Northeast is not returning phone calls or emails at this time. Hetty Vermont, the once proclaimed one-stop shop for cannabis culture and news in Vermont, has gone on hiatus after canceling their January 29th HempFest with little notice. With this, NECAN will not be hosting a convention in Vermont this year, but promises to return in 2022. No further information has been released as to whether Hetty Vermont will make a comeback or if owner Monica Donovan will be staying in the cannabis industry. Former communications director Kathy Bloom is now working for Nurse Grown Organics, Vermont Hemp and CBD. Tomorrow is Vermont's legislative crossover day. This means whatever bills are not being supported may stall or die. Vermonters are called to action to use their voices and advocate to their representatives to support Cannabis Bill S25, Bill H24, which could equal insurance coverage of hemp and CBD products, and recent Bill 309, an act relating to decriminalizing certain chemical compounds found in plants and fungi that are commonly used for medicinal, spiritual, religious, or entheogenic purposes. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The DEA continues to have issues with hemp production and enforcing the law. Now they are complaining that there are a significant number of cases of illegal transportation of hemp disguised as its THC cousin, cannabis, marijuana. Now, when it comes to news from the nation's capital, we go to Phil Adams from the Vote Pro podcast group. Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, and this is the Weed Talk News DC Report. The Senate's confirmation of Merrick Garland as U.S. Attorney General is being hailed, if cautiously, by a number of cannabis advocacy groups. Issuing statements of support and congratulation were groups that included NORML, the National Cannabis Industry Association, and the Drug Policy Alliance. It remains unclear how the Justice Department under Garland will approach enforcement of current drug laws, particularly with regard to the Obama-era Cole Memo, which laid out a policy of non-interference with state legal cannabis markets. Still, Garland's appointment represents to many a potentially more cannabis-friendly DOJ. Morgan Fox, a spokesman for the NCIA, said Garland's past positions on drug policy, quote, give me a lot of hope. Vanita Gupta, President Biden's pick to fill another top Justice Department position, told the Senate Judiciary Committee flatly that she does not support decriminalization of drugs. During her confirmation hearing for Assistant Attorney General this week, Gupta appeared to have backpedaled on her previous position supporting decriminalization of cannabis possession. Responding to a question by Texas Senator John Cornyn, Gupta said, quote, "I believe that substance use disorder is both an enforcement problem and a public health problem, but I do not support decriminalization of drugs." Cannabis reform advocates who had been encouraged by Biden's nomination have expressed dismay with the change. Among them, Maritza Perez, Director of National Affairs at the Drug Policy Alliance, called Gupta's policy switch, quote, "very disappointing." Following the passage by the Virginia General Assembly of an adult use legalization bill, Governor Ralph Northam is now considering action to accelerate the legalization timeline. The legislation, which legalizes the use and possession of cannabis for adults 21 and older, is not scheduled to take effect until 2024. However, a group of Virginia lawmakers and reform advocates are now urging Northam to submit an amendment that would make cannabis legal this year. Citing continued inequality in enforcement against people of color, the group claims the bill does not do enough to address these racial disparities. One member of the group, Delegate Don Scott of Portsmouth, Virginia, said, quote, "We can't continue to stand by while this injustice continues." Data from the Virginia Supreme Court shows that people of color are 4 times more likely than white people to be cited or arrested for cannabis possession in the Commonwealth, even though there is no significant difference in cannabis use between the two groups. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Mexico continues to move towards their new legalization market. One of the last steps to happen there happened this week when the Chamber of Deputies passed a decriminalization law for recreational, scientific, medical, research, and industrial use. This now goes back to the full Senate for final approval. Mexico's adult use age is at 18 as opposed to the U.S. that uses 21 as the age of consumption. Well, now it's time to go north of the border to Solomon, Israel for this week's Canadian Cannabis Report. Solomon?
I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily International, and this is the Weed Talk News Canadian Cannabis Report. Tobacco giant British American Tobacco is taking a 19.9% stake in Canadian cannabis producer Organigram as part of a strategic collaboration deal worth 220 million Canadian dollars. The two companies will establish a joint research center in Canada to collaborate on product development, with an initial focus on CBD products. And Aurora Cannabis has filed a preliminary short-form base shelf prospectus that will allow it to raise up to $1 billion by issuing a variety of securities over a 25-month period. The company said the cash raise will give it flexibility to pursue strategies that could include acquisitions or partnerships. You can read those stories and more at mjbizdaily.com. I'm Solomon Israel for Marijuana Business Daily.
Here's this week's factoid courtesy of MJ Biz Daily's Fact Book. Did you know that for every single dollar that is spent in the legal cannabis market, $2.50 gets injected into the economy? That fact and more available in the MJ Biz Daily Fact Book, available on their website, mjbizdaily.com.
New Jersey continues to move forward on their new adult use regulations and laws, but legislators there are still trying to tweak the underage reporting issue if young people under the age of 21 are found to be using or possessing cannabis. Yes, they want to be able to tell the parents first. I actually support that idea. Finally tonight, a medical marijuana correction in the state of Oklahoma. If you've been following that state's story, they opened their medicinal program in 2018 and quickly distributed licenses to over 2,000 licensees, quickly becoming the nation's largest distributor of legal cannabis licenses. However, in 2020, there was an 8% decline in total licenses in that state. The head of their industry association, Bud Scott, explains, quote, "To say there is a retail saturation in the state is an understatement," unquote. Consider that Colorado is second in the number of licensees with 1,047. Oklahoma still has almost twice as many. only in America. That's Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
Hi, I'm Ben Shower, New England rep for Salient Video Management Systems. Let me tell you what makes us different in the security space. We're your trusted advisors for all your security needs. I know how complicated the regulations are in cannabis, and working with Salient Systems will be the polar opposite of that. I give free consultations and will walk you through every step of the process so that you can get what you need at the price you can afford. We're robust, we're simple and scalable. We're Salient Systems, your solutions to all your security needs. Please contact me at the information below, and I'm looking forward to being your trusted advisor.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first. Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.